Hey everybody, welcome back to Some Things Fishy. Super stoked to have you here. We got an awesome video coming out today. We're going to be talking about the ultimate guide to clownfish care. Myself, Sean, my parents, we've had experience with clownfish for well over a decade. They're my favorite fish in the saltwater fish tank realm. So we're going to do a deep dive into how to really care for them, what you need to know, what you might need to avoid, things like that, what they need to eat, what the saltwater level needs to be, pH. We're going to talk about like the nitty gritty stuff, and then we're also going to talk about some of the just the general stuff that you need to know if you're going to get clownfish in your fish tank. So thanks for joining us. Again, this is Some Things Fishy. Go ahead and subscribe to our channel. We got lots of cool videos heading your way. Like this video, comment below, tell us what you think. Clownfish, again, like I said before, are my favorite type of fish to have in a saltwater fish tank. What's really cool about these fish is that they are great for beginners, they're great for experts. There's just tons of different things you can do with them, no matter what your skill level is. You can get tons of different types of anemones, there's tons of different types of species and colors of clownfish. So really, the possibilities are endless. So no matter what your skill level is, I hope that you find this video to be very resourceful, and I hope you know that clownfish is a good fit for your tank, no matter what. Maybe this is your first time and you're just about to get into the hobby. Great. Clownfish should be your first fish. They are going to be absolutely fantastic to start your fish tank off with. Maybe you've had fish tanks for over 10 years. Awesome. There's tons of cool species of clownfish, and you can mix and match, and you can also get cool anemones to go with them as well. So there's a lot of cool things that you can do on more of an intermediate or expert level with saltwater fish tanks. So the first thing that I kind of want to dive into with this ultimate guide to clownfish care is just food. Food type, I think, is important for us to talk about first. So clownfish, again, are very hardy fish. They don't go, they're also very adaptable too, is a good word to use. They can eat tons of different types of things. And, you know, it's even good to kind of throw in a different mix of their diet. It's very good for them. What I typically like to feed them, and what I think they like the most, you can kind of tell what they like and what they don't like but by how quickly they eat it, is frozen mysis or even frozen brine. Thawing that in a cup of salt water and chucking that into their tank, they will absolutely go nuts. And there's tons of different types of brands and things that you can get of those, but frozen mysis, frozen brine, those are great for their diet, for their food. They love it. Clownfish, you know, you can also get pellet food. That's cheaper, it's easier. Flakes, there's also a lot of flakes. You can get pellet and flake food that's made for saltwater fish. And those are also a good route to go to. Nothing wrong with that. They will like it, they will eat it, and they will be healthy and fine. How often should you feed them? I think that you should feed your clownfish 1 to 3 times a day, depending on their size, depending on how many you have in the tank, how many other fish you have in the tank. If you got a big, huge tank full of fish, maybe 50 gallons, 75 gallons, something like that, maybe you want to think about feeding them more than once a day. But mine, the ones that I have right now are just in like a 16-gallon BioCube. So I would just feed them once a day. Maybe sometimes I even put like food in the morning, and then like some flake food, like some mysis in the morning, and then some flake food in the evening, just to give them a little bit of extra. But the one thing you want to avoid is overfeeding them. If you overfeed them, and especially if they can't eat it all in time before it maybe floats to the ground or sinks to the ground or anything like that, then you're going to get bad pH levels in your water, and in the end, it's going to be actually really bad for them. So feed them only what they can handle. Don't overfeed them, and obviously you don't want to underfeed them. So depending on the size and how many you have, 1 to 3 times a day is going to be the best for you. In terms of the size of the tank that you want to have for your clownfish, really totally depends, and there's lots of different things you can do. I've seen people have like a micro tank, which is like a 5-gallon tank that they just put on their desk, and they just put 1 clownfish in there with some coral and an anemone. That's totally fine. It's going to be great. But, you know, if you're going to have a couple in there, I think you want to at least have 10 gallons. But you can get, you know, I think they call it like a Harlem tank, where you put like a ton, like 20 different clownfish in there. That you're definitely going to want to have a bigger tank, 50 gallons plus. So really just depends, the gallon size of your tank in terms of care for clownfish really depends on how many you have in there. If you're going to have one clownfish, I'd say 5 to 10 gallons. Anything more than one clownfish, probably want 10 to 15 gallons. Like two clownfish is good with 10 to 15 gallons. And then anything else above that, 35 gallons, 50 gallons for multiple clownfish and maybe some other fish in there too. So keep that in mind. Another thing that I also want to mention with clownfish care is clownfish are coral safe. You don't have to worry about them eating your coral or anything like that. No problem there. And in the wild, clownfish host anemones. Anemone clownfish symbiotic relationships are a real thing in the wild, and it's really, really cool. Now that clownfish are mainly bred in captivity, they're starting to lose that symbiotic relationship with anemones, and sometimes you have to kind of work with them, get them used to the anemone, maybe feed them only in their anemone for a while. It's a lot harder to get them to host anemones, or anemone, I think is actually the correct term. So be aware of that. They are definitely more than safe and friendly with anemone. Clownfish are genetically made to bond and have that symbiotic relationship with anemones. Now, keep this in mind though. They don't have to have one. I think a lot of people think that, if I'm going to get a clownfish, I'm going to have to get an anemone. I saw it on Finding Nemo. They have to live in an anemone. That is not the case. You don't have to have an anemone to have clownfish. You can, and I would definitely recommend getting to that point, but don't put an anemone in your tank if your tank is less than 6 to 8 months old. It's not going to survive. It's going to be a very expensive purchase, and it's going to be very bad if it dies in your tank. So that's very sad. So keep that in mind. Anemones are great. Anemone, whatever, I don't know what the term is, but they're great. They're really cool. That symbiotic relationship with clownfish is amazing. It's incredible to watch, but it's not 100% necessary. So let's talk about the salt level. Salt level, I've done some research from different resources, and the salt level that you want needs to be 1.02 to 1.025. You want your salt level to be in there. It's kind of a low salt level, and that's good because it keeps bacteria out. But anything above that or below that might be a little bit dangerous to your clownfish. Let's talk about pH. pH is when you overfeed them, if there's a lot of poo in the water, things like that. Your pH level should be between 8.1 and 8.4. That's how acidic the water is. You can get lots of test kits from the store, online, to test the pH levels, pneumonia or ammonia and things like that. You also want to be testing, but anything between that is good. Anything above that or below that, you might start to see some issues. And you don't want that, obviously. In terms of the temperature, clownfish are tropical saltwater fish, so the temperature needs to be a little bit higher, but anywhere between 72 to 78 degrees Fahrenheit is good. In Celsius, I think that's anywhere between, correct me if I'm wrong, sorry Europeans, I think it's anywhere between like 22 to 26, or maybe it's 24 to 26 degrees Celsius. So again, this is an obvious fact, but clownfish are saltwater fish. So you can't put them in freshwater tanks. They will not survive even a few minutes in there. You also can't put them in brackish water, which is like a mix of salt water and fresh water. So also keep that in mind. That's a pretty well-known fact though. Okay, talking about the gender. So clownfish are super interesting when it comes to the gender. All clownfish are born male, and when they're babies, they're all male. But as they grow and the hormones start coming, one of them will become larger and become the female. So they have a sex change. So that's super interesting, and this is something that you really need to know in terms of clownfish care, because if you're going to the store and you see two big clownfish that you think are really cool, they have cool colors, but they're in separate tanks, probably not a good buy, because those are two clownfish that have developed to become females, and it's not good to mix females together. They're likely going to fight. It's likely not going to be a good combination, and it's not good. So you don't want two females. You don't want two of the large ones. What I would recommend is you either buy a clownfish or a pair of clownfish if you're looking to get more than one when they're smaller, when they're babies.
There's a little bit of risk because when they're babies, you don't know if they have infections or parasites or anything, so they could die, but they're usually pretty cheap. We'll talk about how much they cost soon. But yeah, get them either when they're babies, tiny, because then one will become the female, they'll pair, and one will become the female, and one will stay the male. Or go to the store or online and buy clownfish that are already paired. This will avoid any types of aggression, any types of miscommunication, things like that. So that is definitely the way you want to do it when you're buying the clownfish in terms of gender. Keep in mind, males are the smaller ones, females are the larger ones. You don't necessarily want to mix the females together and buy them when they're young, is a good recommendation that I would give you. All right, moving on. Let's see. This is kind of obvious, but it's really good practice to keep a lid on the tank. It's very common for clownfish. There's other fish that it's more common with to jump out, but clownfish are known to jump out. It kind of depends on the species and other factors, but it's good practice to keep a lid on the tank so they don't jump out. The worst thing that can happen is you wake up to a dry clownfish on the floor. Don't want that at all. Okay, let's talk a little bit about clownfish compatibility. And we have a whole video, Something's Fishy. We made a whole video a few months ago about clownfish compatibility. So you can check that out on our channel to get more in depth with it. But like I said at the beginning, there are tons of different types and species of clownfish. And this is mainly because of selective breeding, things like that, breeding in captivity. You can mix and match and get tons of cool colors, sizes, shapes, things, all the fun stuff. It's really cool, but you also need to know a little bit about it. So there's different types of species of clownfish. There's the, and forgive my pronunciation here, the Ocellaris, the Percula, there's skunk, there's tomato, there's a bunch of different types of clownfish. As a general rule of practice, mixing any form, any breed of Ocellaris and Percula is going to be totally fine. They've been bred in captivity together a lot, so there's likely going to be, they'll likely still pair. There's likely not going to be any aggression between those. So those are the ones that should be fine to mix and match. Get different species together, Ocellaris and Percula. The ones that you want to avoid, avoid like crazy. And we also made a video just on maroon clownfish, so check that one out too. But you want to avoid mixing maroon clownfish with any other type of clownfish. For whatever reason, the breed, the maroon or the tomato clownfish breed has gotten extremely aggressive towards their own breed. So even if you get two maroon clownfish, they'll be aggressive towards each other. They'll be aggressive towards Ocellaris, Percula, any other type of clownfish, and they'll also even be aggressive towards other fish in your tank that aren't even clownfish. So those are the ones in terms that you need to know in terms of clownfish care that you need to be very, very cautious with. This is the dilemma. They are so cool. In my opinion, the maroon clownfish are the most beautiful of all the breeds of all the colors. But man, are they aggressive. Seriously, I'll put some videos. I hope you're seeing these videos here. They are so aggressive. They will kill each other. I can't even go to our local clownfish store without seeing dead maroon clownfish in the tank. It's just always there. And in fact, my buddy Sean, who's also on this channel, was looking to buy maroon clownfish, and he was completely persuaded not to. By the store employees, they said, please do not get these because they will die, and we don't want you to have dead fish. They just get them in stock, and people buy them, and it's always bad. So be careful with that. The clownfish compatibility, Ocellaris, always going to be fine with Ocellaris. Percula, always going to be fine with Percula. Ocellaris plus Percula, also likely to be a very good match. And again, be careful with the maroon clownfish. Obviously, they are insane. So that is most of what I wanted to cover at this video. Again, this is the ultimate guide to knowing what you need to know to care for your clownfish. And again, I'll just kind of go over some of the main points. First off, clownfish are very hardy clownfish. They're very hardy. So if you're new, don't worry, it's going to be fine. They will likely survive, even if you're kind of just figuring things out. If not, simple Ocellaris clowns typically can go for $12. You can get them pretty cheap. So as sad as it is, if they do die, it's likely not going to be the end of the world. It's not like you spent $200 on a clownfish, which you can, There are many types of breeds and colors that you can get for well over $200. So I wouldn't recommend doing that, especially right off the bat. But that is the cool thing about clownfish, is they are for all different experience levels. So if you have the budget, if you have the experience, I would definitely recommend getting some of those $200 clownfish. They're very cool, very fun. Clownfish, like I just said, are very fun fish. They like get to know you and they kind of follow you around. They like you. They know you're the feeder. They know you're the provider. They're amazing. Clownfish, remember, clownfish are coral safe. Feed them 1 to 3 times a day, 10 gallons and above, unless you have just one in a micro tank. 1.02 to 1.025 salt level, pH 8.1 to 8.4, acidity, temperature 72 to 78 degrees Fahrenheit. They're saltwater fish. Be careful with the large females. Don't mix those. Be careful with different compatibility types like I just talked about. And buy them when they're young. That's what I would recommend most of the time. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being here at Some Things Fishy. I hope you've enjoyed this video. We've got lots of other clownfish. We have a whole playlist of clownfish. So go ahead and check that out. Like this video and tell us what you think below. We'd love to chat with you. If you see things differently, no problem. Tell me what you think. What types of care tactics would you recommend for this video, for future videos? And we'll go ahead and try and implement them in the future. Thank you very much. We'll catch you next time. This is Some Things Fishy. I'm Landon. Please subscribe. We'll talk to you later.